World War I, one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. A war so catastrophic that, at the time, people truly believed it would be, the war to end all wars. To understand why World War I erupted in 1914, we need to understand the world that existed just before it. Europe was experiencing massive change. New inventions, cars, telephones, airplanes, were transforming society. Populations were booming. Countries were industrializing at lightning speed. But beneath this progress was political stress. Nations wanted more power, more influence, more security, and these desires clashed again and again. Historians often summarize the long-term causes with the acronym MAIN: militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism. These weren't isolated forces. They fed into each other, reinforced each other, and eventually detonated together. Let's break each of them down. Militarism is the belief that having a strong military is essential, and that using military power is an acceptable or even desirable way to solve problems. By the early 1900s, European nations weren't just building armies, they were glorifying them. Military parades filled the streets. School children were taught patriotic songs and heroic stories of past battles. Newspapers celebrated new weapons as if they were sports victories. The most dramatic example of militarism was the arms race between Germany and Britain. Germany, newly unified in 1871 and rapidly industrializing, wanted to challenge Britain's naval dominance. Britain responded by building more advanced warships, including the famous Dreadnought, a revolutionary battleship that made all earlier ships obsolete. Other nations, France, Russia, Austria-Hungary, followed suit, increasing both their armies and their war budgets. By 1914, Europe wasn't just ready for war. In some ways, it was expecting it. The belief that war was inevitable made political leaders less cautious and more willing to escalate small conflicts. They assumed their massive militaries would bring a quick victory. They couldn't have been more wrong. To maintain the balance of power, countries formed alliances, promising to support each other if attacked. But instead of preventing war, these alliances created a situation where a conflict between two nations could drag half the world into battle. Two major alliance blocs emerged: the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy, though Italy switched sides when the war actually began, and the Triple Entente, France, Russia, and Britain. These alliances weren't just political friendships. They included secret agreements, military plans, and obligations that leaders couldn't easily ignore. Imagine Europe as a giant row of dominoes. If one fell, the rest would follow. And the system was so interconnected that a spark anywhere could set everything off. This interconnectedness meant that local tensions became global threats. And that's exactly what happened in 1914. Imperialism was, honestly, another major factor. The great powers of Europe were competing fiercely for colonies all around the world. Colonies meant, raw materials, wealth, strategic military bases, and of course, national prestige. Britain controlled the world's largest empire. France had vast holdings in Africa and Asia. Germany, coming late to the imperial game, felt it deserved more territory, more influence, and more respect. This competition created jealousy and conflict. Germany's imperial ambitions clashed heavily with Britain and France, fueling mistrust long before the war began. The world just wasn't big enough for so many empires demanding expansion. The pressure, it just kept building. Nationalism is powerful. It can inspire unity, but also conflict. Countries like Germany and France were filled with patriotic pride. Germany believed it had become a great power too late and deserved more respect. France, on the other hand, still nursed a deep hatred toward Germany after losing the territory of Alsace-Lorraine in 1871. Nationalist newspapers spoke boldly of destiny, dominance, and the need to prove national strength. For empires like Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, nationalism was a nightmare. These empires ruled over dozens of ethnic groups: Serbs, Croats, Bosnians, Czechs, Slovaks, Romanians, and more, many of whom wanted independence. Nowhere was nationalism more explosive than the Balkans. This region, often called the powder keg of Europe, was home to rising Slavic nationalism, especially Serbian nationalism. Serbia wanted to unite all Slavic peoples in the region into a single nation, an idea fiercely opposed by Austria-Hungary, which controlled several Slavic territories. This tension would become the spark that lit the world on fire. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, visited Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia. In the crowd were members of a secret nationalist group called the Black Hand, who wanted Bosnia to join Serbia. After a failed attempt earlier in the day, 19-year-old Gavrilo Princip found himself face-to-face with the Archduke's car. He fired the shots that killed the Archduke and his wife, Sophie. Why did this assassination matter? Well, Europe was already full of tension, rivalry, and fear. The assassination was like tossing a match into a room full of gasoline. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia. Serbia denied involvement. Nations took sides. Alliances activated. And Europe moved closer and closer to war. After the assassination, Europe didn't rush immediately to war. Instead, what followed was a month of ultimatums, threats, and diplomatic failures known as the July Crisis. Backed by Germany, Austria-Hungary issued a harsh ultimatum to Serbia, demanding extreme concessions that threatened Serbian sovereignty. Serbia accepted most demands, but rejected a few. It wasn't enough. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Then the alliance system took over like falling dominoes. Russia mobilized to protect Serbia. Germany declared war on Russia. France mobilized to support Russia. Germany declared war on France. To reach France, Germany invaded neutral Belgium. Britain, protecting Belgium, declared war on Germany. In just a few weeks, what began as a regional conflict had become a world war. Historians often point to several deeper reasons why the July Crisis spiraled into global conflict. First, miscalculations and overconfidence. Leaders on all sides believed the war would be short, decisive, and even beneficial. They underestimated the strength of their enemies, the destructive power of modern weapons, and the impact of global alliances. Most nations had strict mobilization schedules. Once troops began moving, stopping the process was nearly impossible without losing military advantage. The trust between nations had eroded for years, and even attempts at negotiation were viewed with suspicion. Many governments facing internal problems believed a successful war could strengthen national unity. These deeper causes made the assassination much more dangerous than it otherwise might have been. World War I didn't stay a European conflict because, well, European powers controlled large portions of the world. Their colonies and allies were pulled into the fight. British India, French West Africa, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and the Ottoman Empire, which joined the Central Powers. The war became global not because countries far away wanted war, but because they were tied to European empires. So what really caused World War I? The assassination was the spark. But sparks only cause explosions when, the environment is already full of explosives. The true causes were militarism, this idea that war was good and winnable. Alliances, which turned a local conflict into a world war. Imperialism, fueling rivalry between major powers. Nationalism, creating pride, resentment, and ethnic tension. Miscalculations, as leaders assumed war would be short and easy. Rigid plans and timetables, making backing down almost impossible. And finally, diplomatic breakdown. There just wasn't any trust left to negotiate peace. It was a perfect storm of ambition, fear, pride, and honestly, a lot of bad decisions. World War I teaches us that peace can be fragile, especially when nations build huge militaries, form rigid alliances, pursue aggressive nationalism, see war as a tool instead of a last resort, and underestimate the consequences. These lessons, they remain really relevant in today's world. Understanding history isn't just about remembering dates. It's about recognizing patterns that could repeat if, we ignore them. So now that you've seen how Europe drifted into catastrophe, what do you think was the most important cause of World War I? Was it militarism, alliances, the chaos of nationalism in the Balkans? Or was it truly the assassination that turned tension into tragedy? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap that notification bell so you never miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.